Next item we have on the agenda is a letter of support for amendment to Class 9 limited distillery license. We have Ms. Jennifer Jordan here. She is the chair of the Board of License Commissioners. Looks like we might have Mr. Duval
Good evening.
here.
We also have Mr. Duval, who's legal counsel for the
All right,
board.
Mr. Duval.
Good evening. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're here to propose a change to the current legislation in place for Class B beer, wine, liquor restaurant license holders, or typically called the restaurant license holders, in addition to also holding a Class 9 limited distillery license, in order to provide those establishments the ability to sell off-premise their distilled products. The board recognizes currently that Wicomico County, we do not have any businesses holding a Class 9 limited distillery license at this time. However, the board does recognize that these establishments and licenses do exist elsewhere in the state. I think by our count there's 6 of them. 2 of them are residing right next door in Worcester County. So that being said, what the board is trying to do, or the Board of License Commissioners is trying to do, is position Wicomico County and our licensing system for the Class B beer, wine, and liquor and the Class 9 limited distillery, so that when the opportunity arises in the county, that we're already positioned with the ability for these establishments to sell the product that they're distilling and manufacturing, because currently that does not exist.
So the public understands. I guess what this is trying to do is that if there's a restaurant no different than in Ocean City where you'll see different establishments, we have a restaurant that has gotten into, I guess, the distillery business. They want to be able to sell that product over the counter per se.
Yes.
In maybe their bar or in their restaurant.
Yes.
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 The way it is now in Wicomico County, if that were to be the case where you had a distillery, you would have to actually take your bottled product, I guess, sell it to our county dispensary and then buy it back from the county dispensary.
Yes, that is the way that we understand
Okay,
it.
so we're trying to see if there isn't a better way where we can be more business friendly to make this work in a way where it can be done in a more direct fashion publicly. But I want to make sure the public understands where we are without the lingo of the Class A, B, all the
Right.
issues.
Let me try to give you some background. First, so you know what a Class 9 distillery is,
Thank you.
how this law came into effect, and the issue that's unique to Wicomico County, which is that we have a dispensary system here still, being the last one of its kind in the state. Montgomery County has a more comprehensive, they don't call it a dispensary, but in Wicomico, all liquor has to be sold out of the dispensary. In Montgomery County, all alcohol is sold through a county store, I'll call it. So that's a little piece. So this law, creating the Class 9 dispensaries, was effective. It's a new law, October 2023. As Ms. Jordan said, there are 6 licenses statewide. There are 2 in Worcester, Burley Oak in Berlin, and Secrets, as Mr. Cannon mentioned, in Ocean City. There is one in Chestertown. There is one in Ellicott City in Howard County. There's one in Hagerstown, Washington County, and one in Baltimore City called Old Line Spirits. There are larger distilleries in the state. I don't know how many, but they're called Class 1 distilleries, and they produce more alcohol than a Class 9 is permitted to produce. The license to the Class 9 distillery is a state license, and the distillery would be regulated by the state in terms of what's produced, whether it's in compliance with state regulations. Our board would not regulate the Class 9 distillery per se. But there is a provision in state law that in order to hold a Class 9 distillery license, you must have, the entity, the licensee must also have either a Class B restaurant hotel or a Class D tavern license. And you may be wondering what the reason for that is. I can't tell you, I don't know the background of it, but that's what we're left with. So the board is, well, let me go to the next step. So in Wicomico County, we have Class Bs and Class Ds, which are restaurants and taverns. The other requirement for the license, and this is why we're here, is that the licensee have an off-sale privilege. So no Class D beer, wine, liquor licensee or Class B restaurant beer, wine, liquor. And I know, Mr. Cannon, you admonished me not to keep throwing out the classes, but unfortunately it's necessary. We're in the world of alcohol beverage law. I'll try to steer clear of that. But so neither of those two licensees has an off-sale privilege. You have to have off-sale privilege in order to have the Class 9 distillery license. So the proposal is to allow, and this would be the amendment to the restaurant license, to allow a restaurant beer, wine, liquor to sell, if it has a Class 9 distillery license, to sell its manufactured distilled product off sale, but no other product, not the beer, not the wine, not the other liquor, only what's it produced at the Class 9 distillery. We think that's a necessary limitation on opening up the off sale. For one reason, you've got other restaurant licensees in the county. If you open it up only for someone who has a Class 9 to sell anything off sale, the other restaurants, I think, would be unfairly compromised in their ability to sell and make money. So that's the reason to limit it that way. Let me dovetail into the dispensary issue. So a Class 9 distiller can sell anywhere in the state to a wholesale entity. Restaurants aren't wholesalers, okay? But a Class 9 distillery is allowed under the current law at the state level to also have what's called a Class 8 wholesale license. A Class 8 wholesaler can sell alcohol at retail to restaurants across the state. In Wicomico County, you bump up against the dispensary law. So if there were a Class 9 distiller license in Wicomico County that had the wholesale license, it could sell to wholesalers across the state. It could also sell at the retail level to restaurants across the state. It could only sell to the dispensary in Wicomico County and in Montgomery County to what I call the county store in Montgomery County. So that's where we are. And to the point you made, Mr. Cannon, this is a different segment of the alcohol business. A microbrewer in Wicomico County, and I'll use the example of Evolution, cannot sell directly to one of their restaurants. They actually have to sell to a wholesaler and then purchase, if they're going to sell their own product. They have to buy from the wholesaler and then put it in the restaurant. So this is not unique. It's arguably an impediment, but I wanted to make sure the board knew that if there were a Class 9 distiller in the county, it could still sell all across the state to any wholesaler and to any restaurant in a county that doesn't have a dispensary system, which is every county other than Wicomico and Montgomery.
Or did I misspeak? In other words, let's say there's a restaurant that wants to have a distillery. I'm sorry. I don't know if I misspoke or not then. I mean, if there's a restaurant that wants to have a distillery because they want to have the advantage of selling, or at least selling their own liquor at their restaurant, will they be allowed to do that, or will they not?
The answer is yes, but they would
Yes.
have to sell it to the dispensary
Buy it back.
and then buy it back from the
And
dispensary.
No, I mean, if we were to pass.
If we were, yes.
If we were to pass this.
Yes.
What, they would still, I thought the reason that we were trying to pass it was because we didn't want them to have to go to the distillery and then have it come back again.
Well, it may be the desire, and that may
We
be
can't get
the
around
better way to
dispensary.
go about things, but the state of current law is
Right.
that you would have to comply with the dispensary law that's still in effect in the county.
How many licenses would that be for that Class 9?
How many?
Yeah.
We don't propose a limitation on the number that would be
Okay.
issued. And the decision on the number that would be issued within the county would not be the decision of the Wicomico County Board of
Right.
License. It would be a state decision.
Yeah.
They would probably consult,
Right.
but
So we're treating it like craft breweries, but for liquor.
yes, to some, yeah.
In a
Because
sense, yes.
the microbreweries are also licensed and regulated by the state.
Did you also say that someone that had this license and was distilling could not sell beer or wine at that same establishment?
It would only be the product that they are manufacturing and distilling.
They couldn't.
They,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Let's
Gotcha.
be
Okay.
clear. They could only sell off-sale
right.
the product they're distilling. They could sell beer and wine at the restaurant. They could sell whatever you can sell
For
under a
on-premise.
Class B restaurant license.
But for off-premise, it would just be the distilled spirits. So right now, that capability doesn't exist. So what we're proposing is that change, to give the Class B beer, wine, and liquor, who also have the Class 9 limited distillery, the ability to sell the product that they distill
Right.
off-premise.
Another way to look at
That doesn't happen right now. The
Yeah.
way it's written, it can't happen right now.
Yeah, another way to look at it is if there is no off-sale privilege at the restaurant or the tavern, there is no Class 9 distillery in Wicomico County. The only way you can have it is if you have the off-sale privilege. And I don't have an answer if you're thinking to yourselves, why would they put that limitation on? I don't know.
So if this were to happen, because the public gets more worried about what this creates, and,
Right.
what would the environment look like in Wicomico County? How would it change the environment in Wicomico County? Would that encourage, 10 distilleries on every block? I mean, exactly what do you anticipate how this would change the environment within the
Let
county?
me start. You certainly chime in.
In layman's terms, kind of like.
Yeah. So
I would be layman, he would be legal.
So it would be subject to county zoning requirements. I haven't looked into that. I don't know if Benson knows off the top of his head. It's probably a light manufacturing type of usage. My guess is, but I don't know whether there's even a provision in the zoning code that would cover it at the moment. So there's that aspect of it. There's no requirement that the distillery be on the same land premises as the restaurant or the tavern. And we suspect in most cases, it would be elsewhere. And the zoning laws may require that separation in any event. So I cannot answer your question directly. Is there going to be a dispensary on every street corner? Now, having said that, Mr. Cannon, if the council decided that it wanted to put its own limitation beyond what we've provided to you in the amendment, it would not be inappropriate for you to say there could only be X number of these distilleries within the county. That potentially opens up another can of worms, but I think you could do that with your legislation that would be local to Wicomico County. And while I'm on, well, I'll get to that other point later, because it's,
Do we have anything like that for craft breweries? Like limiting the amount of, like, I'm not saying let's limit.
think so.
but I'm just curious if there's anything.
limitation on the number of craft
Yeah.
breweries.
Currently, no.
And I mean, we don't have craft breweries on every corner.
Right.
Yeah, to some extent, the economics of the business kind of controls.
Right.
But you don't, that doesn't give you the comfort level that you might want with the number that might be put in place.
Well, and I think,
And maybe we should have come in, we can always come in with more homework. I don't know what it costs somebody to set up a Class 9 distillery. They're permitted under law to produce up to 100,000 gallons of alcohol annually. It's a fairly large operation. If you want to know, I'm prepared to tell you more about what a Class 9 distillery is, if you want to know more about it.
well, and I think, too, to address the distillery on every corner is part of the state legislation that came out with the Class 9 limited distillery license. They are required to be the holder of a Class B beer, wine, and liquor license, which is typically known as the restaurant license. So it has to be a distillery that's attached with an operation that also has a Class B beer, wine, and liquor license, which we refer to as the restaurant license.
There are lots of those in the county, Class B licenses.
Right.
There are only 3 tavern licenses. We're not recommending that this be permitted for a tavern licensee. You're certainly free to have your own policy perspective on that and ask that they be included. The reason that they were not was because traditionally in this county, they have been more tightly regulated, taverns have been, than restaurants. The reason is historical. You have the stereotypical tavern roadside bar, and we have had those in this county. Not all current tavern licensees fit that description, but we've had them in the past, and I think that's probably the historical reason for the title regulation of taverns. So
I guess in summary, I guess going forward, this is to take legislation to the state, allow them to give us the ability to have this. We could theoretically cap it at a certain number, 3 or so licenses if we wanted to, but otherwise we're putting basic legislation to try to get it and to open it up. Once that is then approved in the future, it would come back to then zoning. We would then try to figure out where we want it in the county, and then go forward from there. So you're basically just here to try to talk it through if we want to do anything more or less, but otherwise, do we want to continue to approve this and go forward with this in the county?
yeah, and I guess the only other thing to say in response to that is the local legislative delegation, this was passed, I think, with their blessing. Whether you all were involved in that or not, I don't know, but it's a statewide license. It's available in any county in the state, subject to those restrictions that I described.
So you're requesting a letter of endorsement in reference to what you propose here as these amendments?
Well,
What are you asking of the
You
council?
chime in, but the way I understand it works is the county legislative delegation would want from your body and from the executive a letter of endorsement or request. I'm not sure of the exact nomenclature, but a request that this legislation be put through for the county so that a
So
Class 9.
Council's take. Jeff?
I got a question. If the proposed legislation regarding the liquor dispensary goes through, how is that going to affect this?
Well, if there were an amendment to the dispensary law that allowed restaurants to purchase liquor from other sources beside the dispensary, then your Class 9 Wicomico County Class 9 distillery that also had a wholesale license could sell to Class Bs directly. It would also mean that the distillery that has its own restaurant license could sell its own product without having to purchase it from the dispensary.
Transfer it and then transfer it back.
It wouldn't have to go through that
Right, okay.
merry-go-round process.
So we do need a consensus. Shane, Shaney? Not sure? Shaney?
I'm not sure because I have a problem selling alcohol. Because I know we got a lot of young people in our community, college kids. But I understand they like Evo, because I went there the first time I've been in there. And I see that I didn't realize they couldn't sell their beer, like you take it out or something. But I do agree with that they should be able to. But I don't want to see a lot of distilleries all over our county. I think when we talk about the zoning, it should be zoned in a certain area, not in neighborhoods. And just like I have a problem, we talk about the dispensary situation. I don't want liquor stores all over in these corner stores and where kids can have access to getting alcohol. But I don't think I have a problem with the,
Okay, all right. Joe? Josh? Yes.
Yeah, I apologize to you folks. I should have been able to give you a better answer on the zoning aspect of it, because zoning is going to tie into this, and I apologize to you for that.
Well, we recognize that we have the tools in place to address that, and we have confidence in them as well.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you, folks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next item we have on the agenda is the draft master plan for improvements at the West Metro Core property. Mr. Steve Miller is here, and Mr. Alex Schmidt, as well as Elizabeth Chandler. And some of us have heard this 3 or 4 times over, just so you're aware.
We're glad to be here in front of you tonight. I'm Alex Schmidt with Century Engineering. This is Elizabeth Chandler with Century Engineering. I think you all know Steve. We do have a brief presentation that we want to go through with all of you. I hope it'll be a good end to the open portion of the night. There's nothing controversial about this. Hopefully there's nobody out here that's against it.
Certainly done a good job in getting out into the community, and for you as well as Mr. Miller. We appreciate those efforts and being so transparent with the community, because I think we saw a lot of requests, a lot of concerns that were really, really instrumental. And I think from what I'm seeing here and from what I've heard that you have responded as such. That's really have to commend you on that. So I'll give you the floor, though. Thanks.
All right, so what we're here to talk to you about tonight is the West Metro Core Master Plan. So West Metro Core is the name of a property that the county owns since about 2009. It's located west of Hebron on Levendaschil Road. It's it's east of Hebron on Levendaschil Road, southwest of the intersection of Levendaschil and Rockawalken Road. So we've gone through a process called a master plan. And real quick, what a master plan is might be easier to say what it's not. So a master plan is not shovel-ready. It's not construction plans. It's not something written in stone that can't be changed. What it is kind of a vision, a guideline. So we've done several of these, and a lot of times what ends up getting built is very similar to the master plan, but may be adapted slightly to concur with regulations, environmental concerns, or if there's community input late in the game that they want to see a particular amenity. So the master plan is our vision, the county's vision for what this site is going to look like going forward. There's usually 3 pieces to this process. So the first is an assessment of the existing conditions. So is this site a good site to do something on? Are there wetlands? Are there the utilities? Is there the access that we need? So one of the first things that Century did as part of this process is we looked at the site. We confirmed there are no environmental impacts of concern. The biggest issues with the site is that there is not water, public water, or public sewer, both of which are problems that can be overcome. Parks are not big demands on sewer or water, so an on-site well and a septic system would be reasonable for this. The next thing that we do is we move through a concept development. So the concept development part of this was done with a stakeholder group. Stakeholder group had, I think it was about a dozen people on it in total, most of whom were representatives either of the Parks and Recreation, the tourism department, local residents, and a few of the county, or the city of Salisbury had a representative as well. So we had 4 meetings with them, and at each point, we kind of went through, like, what do we see this site becoming? Early on, it was like, just tell us what you think could be here. What are you hearing from your residents and your citizens that you need in your parks? What amenities don't you have? And then we come back with some really rough sketches that have these amenities, and we refine them a little bit further until we come up with one that's kind of a preferred master plan. There's also a pretty big public outreach component. We did 2 public meetings that were open to the entire public. They were advertised and notified as they should be. We had online surveys where we asked for respondents to reply back with what they liked, what they didn't like, what they wanted to see changed. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail because I do want to make sure it's known that we did consider a lot of input from the public. So the final piece of this was the final master plan and the report that goes with it. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, it's not a hard read. I think there's really only about 15 pages that you need to look at to get the gist of everything that went on, although the report is substantially longer than that. And this master plan is what would be the first step into developing the property if you were to choose to do so. It's not a binding agreement to do anything. There's nothing that is contracted to happen next. It's now up to the council and the residents and Steve's office to decide what would happen next with the property. So as I mentioned, there was a pretty big public component. There was a working group that we worked with. We were a great bunch of people, had a lot of great input. And then we also worked with the public to make sure that their concerns were heard. So as I mentioned, there were 2 public hearings. One was at a local church, the other one was at a local fire company. With both of them, we had surveys that were online that people could respond to. I think Steve also had it out on your website, on various other community communication methods. So we wanted to make sure everybody was aware of what was happening and let them know that they had the opportunity to provide input here. The biggest feedback that we had, and I should mention that both of these workshops were very well attended, of probably one of the most well attended of any one of these that we've done. Easily over 75 people at each one. It may even be over 100 at the second one that we had. The biggest feedback we got was that they liked the site. Everybody was supportive of the idea of a park here. There was just a balance that needed to be struck between Little League and soccer. And we tried to do that. You know, we made some adjustments hearing from the public and what their desires were. We shifted the balance of softball, baseball to soccer to try to address that. But we do understand that that may be the one point of contention moving forward. So we are going to share the master plan with you, and Elizabeth is actually going to go over the final concept. And then after we're finished with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
So this is just kind of a general snippet of the more engaging part of the park. But as Alex said, we worked in the meetings that we had with the working group and the public, we were able to identify the amenities that were a good fit for both the area and the community and the parcel as well. When thinking about those amenities, I like to think about them as either active or passive amenities. So on this slide, I have a summary of the active amenities that we're providing. Some of them are pretty standard park amenities. So we're proposing some playgrounds that can be designed and geared toward all ages and abilities to make sure that they're inclusive. We're proposing some hard courts that right now we're proposing the basketball and pickleball courts because I think we're all pretty aware of how popular pickleball has been recently. And then we also have your standard grassed fields. So we have, as Alex said, the feedback was that there is a desire for the rectangular fields that cater to soccer and lacrosse and field hockey. So we have 3 designated rectangular fields, and then on the other side we have a multi-purpose field that shows softball and baseball fields. Overlaying the rectangular field, so you can kind of flex what you're using there based on the needs. And then moving on to the passive activities, we have, again, kind of some of your standard park amenities. We're proposing walking trails that both circulate through the park and also more nature-based ones that will go through a reforested area because the current parcel is just a farm field, so we want to bring some biodiversity into that area. We also have a dog park proposed. And then we have a lawn area proposed that could then double as an event space because we received a lot of information and feedback that there are some events that happen in the community and county. So we want to be able to make sure that those events could be catered to if desired. And then we also, as I said, the parcel is currently agricultural, and it was decided that the portion of the parcel closest to Levendashiel Road would remain as an agricultural area.
It's hard to see on the display here, but it's that area that would be down toward the logo right down. It doesn't show up very well, but down this area here.
Yeah. So the last slide does kind of show the overview a little bit better, the whole park, the whole parcel, if you will. And what we wanted to do, because we do understand that it's a large parcel, it's 100 acres, so that can be a lot to choose to develop all at once. So we wanted to be able to come up with a plan that could be phased, and what we have proposed currently is a 2-phase process. And that first phase is shown over on the left. You can see this phase kind of takes care of a lot of the site infrastructure. So it brings utilities and the access road into the parcel. It creates a parking lot. It provides all of the stormwater that would be required. But we didn't want to just make a parking lot with this first phase. We want to make sure that there is a park to go to. So we've included the 3 designated rectangular fields, and we have 1 playground proposed and the hard courts proposed, as well as a few trails. And over on the left side, we have that reforested area, because that's something, we know trees take a long time to grow, so we wanted to make sure that those get planted soon to give as much time as possible to really grow. And then over on the right, we have the full build-out, so phase 2, if you will, and that's adding in all of the other amenities that we talked about. So it has the pump track, the lawn area, an additional playground, the dog park, as well as an expansion of the trails, and some more like landscaping and berming to kind of bring some topography and visual interest to the park. So with that, I think that's kind of the end of our presentation, and we wanted to thank you for your time. But if you have any questions, we're happy to answer anything and everything you have.
I have a question, real quick. People do family reunions and parties. Are you intending to put like a pavilion out there?
We do have pavilions, yes.
Yes, there are some
Pavilion,
pavilions.
because people will, and a lot of people, we have to go, I think Cedar, was it Cedar Hill? Cedar Hall, yeah.
we've got a number.
We go there, and then you have Billie Jean Jackson Park, and I think this should have a, like a pavilion, a covering.
Yeah, we do have some pavilion areas proposed.
Okay.
I don't know if I can really get it. Right, oh, it's not going to show up on the screen.
Yeah, it doesn't show well.
Kind of central to the fields, we have some pavilions proposed, and then there's also obviously your like park benches and things like that
yeah.
sprinkled throughout.
That'll be the Shaney Shields Pavilion.
Yeah,
Is that right?
sure.
I can read between the lines.
Right.
Yeah, right. I don't do outdoors well.
Steve, is there a timeline?
Not-
Roughly?
Not necessarily, it'd be years, I think, before you see, I think the big challenge is funding. So the only funding that we currently have is the farm lease monies that we've collected over the years, which could help us pay for the actual design. But as far as construction, I think the timing will depend on the funding. When we have money, we can proceed. If we don't, it'll take longer. So I think that's the big challenge.
And also, just for consideration and timeline, the design of this would be a 12 to 18-month design, and then the construction would be a 12-month period. So 2.5 years minimum.
Okay.
J-
Josh?
Just confirming, pervious pavers for parking, is it?
We've looked at several.
He does his job.
There is a desire to be eco-sensitive. The actual design of that would be part of the next phase that Steve mentioned. But we do discuss the desire to be conservation-minded in the master plan suggestion.
And that's where we will only allow native trees to be planted?
Yeah,
None of them
that would
crepe
be the
myrtles or
intent.
anything?
Yeah, that would be the
Yeah, yeah.
intent with the reforested area
native.
particularly. And then also,
Easy.
as far as stormwater management, we could also explore to see if the site's suitable for infiltration, because sometimes pervious pavers can present a little bit of a maintenance issue. So like the islands within the parking facilities, we could potentially turn those into infiltration basins with like a bioretention area that could then be planted. Like a lot of them it's popular to plant those as like pollinator gardens. And then some other parks that we work with like to incorporate the STEM element. So you could always put up little like informational signs to be like, this is what's happening, and explain the stormwater and rainwater cycle. And there's a lot of different types of elements that you could incorporate it into it really easily.
Great. And then, of course, I know that I'm always saying this, the county can always look out for options to put up, even a couple solar panels on the side or somewhere off, if we can make money off of that or we can lower the cost in that, I think that's always helpful if we can do it in the right way.
It's interesting as this is adjacent to a large solar farm too. So.
There we go. We can just blame the neighbors. Oh, yeah.
Plug it in. Seriously, Mrs. Chandler speaks your language.
Yes.
I'm impressed.
Hire her again, Steve. Yeah. That's good. Thank you all very much.
Of course.
Yeah, any other questions? Mitigations, thought of that mitigate, because that seems where it always gets expensive and complicated. And I know some of the soils were kind of like questionable there. What do you anticipate as far as loading dirt in there, mitigation for whatever it has to be done? What do you anticipate?
I defer to Alex.
Mitigation, I'm not sure, like, as far as quality, but as far as moving materials throughout the site, we can try to, in the design process, we can strike a balance wherever we're going to cut. We can plan to move that fill elsewhere. That's also why those berms are helpful too, because then you cut material that you do have to make sure that you have a level soccer field. You can then move over there to make a little bit of a berm, so you're not necessarily trucking material off and on the site that then will have to be disposed of. Kind of, the goal would be to end up at like a net zero between cut and fill.
Questions? No? All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time. Sorry to hold you up. It's a little unpredictable how late these meetings can go. Steve will tell you that. But we appreciate the work you've been doing. And as I said, we witnessed it at the church, and we witnessed it at the fire department. So
Thank you.
great job, Steve, as usual. Always good. So thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you all for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to adjourn to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second? Second. Favor?